Andrew Wilson claims it's just men running the show, so how does he explain women with guns, tech, or authority?
If you said agreed to power based on force,
Yeah.
and that those who are disabled are protected and their will is protected, and those who are elderly are protected and their will is
If
protected.
there's force, yeah.
Then why can't you do the same thing with women? Why do women now usurp their right to protection and bodily autonomy under
There's not rights.
force
These aren't
action.
rights. It's just force. Can
It is a right.
Can women manipulate men to use force on their behalf? Sure, that's happened before.
Here, he refuses to accept that when men protect women, that's basically enforcing women's rights. Instead, he just calls it force and says women can only ever appeal to men's power. There's his special pleading. He counts male-backed force as real when it's for other groups, like the elderly, not when it's for women. So he just relabels things to dodge the challenge instead of addressing the real point.
Any woman in Congress or the Supreme Court has more power than you ever have.
No, they don't. They only have the power of enforcement.
He ignores the fact that men are already enforcing women's power and just redefines it as borrowed, so he doesn't have to admit the counterexample. This is special pleading and begging the question.
I just think it's easier to say that our system of rights, I mean, I know that I agree with you that our rights are sort of a construct, but we do have, in practice, legal rights. I find it hard to just say that, like, well, that's all an illusion, because we're living it every day. I mean, we have legal rights. If you commit a crime, you go to jail. I mean, that is all a social construct, but we're living it. I mean...
You're talking about a descriptor of is and ought.
So here she says that rights are real in practice, and if you break the law, you go to jail, so legal rights exist. He sidesteps by launching into philosophy is versus ought, never actually answering the example. He doesn't explain why enforcing rights makes them unreal, just pushes the conversation into the weeds. And then he misframes her point as being about morals when she's talking about actual facts. So total dodge, non sequitur, and a way to avoid answering the real question.
Force prevents rights violations necessarily.
It's the only thing that prevents rights violations.
Well, if you're saying men have the monopoly on force and that's instilled within patriarchy, then why do rights violations occur?
Well, no, that doesn't even follow. It would just follow that men are the only ones who could stop rights violations.
When pressed on why rights violations still happen if men hold all the power, he just says, well, only men can stop those violations. That's circular reasoning. He's using his own claim as the proof for itself. He ignores the fact that rights get violated anyway, which undermines his whole idea.
I agree that your rights can be physically infringed upon, but I don't know if that's the same as saying that because it can be infringed upon or violated, that means the basis of the right doesn't exist. I guess that's my contention.
Well, who gives you these rights other than the agents who are enforcing them on your behalf? You're not giving them to yourself.
So here she says that just because men can violate rights doesn't mean men create rights. Seems kind of obvious, right? But apparently not. He dodges this one by basically repeating his line that rights only come from whoever enforces them. Never explains how enforcement and origin are the same thing. He just kind of repeats it as if that's proof. Begging the question, he likes that one a lot too. It's just a way to avoid actually answering.
So then there is power that comes not from force. If people who do not have the power to force can utilize the strength of others on their behalf.
The strength of others would be force.
Okay.
He's acting like every kind of influence, whether it's charisma, leadership, law, etc., is just force, wiping out the differences between them. So this means that he can never be proven wrong because he just keeps redefining words to fit his claim. He never answers the actual objection, which is that there's power and influence that doesn't come from violence.
You just said the descriptive reality of right now is that we have the institution. So it's not a descriptive reality of the world right now. Like you just said.
No, it still is.
People are going to wait. Those men are not all on like one team and then women are all on one team, right? So if you're talking about individual relationships, why the should someone like me be like, oh, you know what? I'm in a relationship with you and we have all the institutions. We have all the power. Most men are on my side, but me and you should still have this dynamic because in Andrew's hypothetical future.
Why would we care what why would we care what the people without rights say? I don't get it. Why would we care what the people without rights say? Why would we care?
No,
so if you have no voting power, why would we care what you say?
Here she points out that not all men are united and that many men support women's rights. He just ignores the details and says, well, who cares what powerless people say? It's a circular. He assumes from the start that anyone without force doesn't matter, which is the thing he's supposed to be proving.
Feminism was a way for you to have force.
Yeah. I mean, I think that social movements like collective political
Well,
action can approximate
for
force.
sure. But what do you need force for? If you're saying that men collectively would not move against women using force, why the hell do you need force then?
I think that they would collectively move against women using force. I'm saying
Well, then you just contradicted yourself.
I'm talking more in a political force sense. I don't think that men
What
in
is
general
political force?
I think the use of like rights, things like that, like restricting rights, restricting mobility, disenfranchisement,
That's
things
all
like
force.
that. It's all backed up with force, but I don't think it always necessarily translates to a one-to-one.
It is force because absent force, law has no bite. So if somebody says it is the law that you not do X, but there's no enforcement if you break the law, is that a law?
I mean, is enforcement always violence? Like, is
enforcement always must be backed with physical violence for a law or for any type of right, period.
He insists that only force counts as power.
Maybe backed with the threat of, but do you think that all enforcement takes place solely through the threat of physical violence?
Yes.
Or do you think there are social mechanisms?
All of it has to be backed with the physical prowess of enforcement. Otherwise, why couldn't it just be ignored?
That's a false dichotomy. He's ignoring all the ways that rights are enforced or respected without violence.
I don't think men or women enforce rights. I think institutions enforce rights.
Well, so
men and women give away, or they concede things to allow that institution to have power over them when they enter social contract with the government.
Does a room have power? Or do people have power?
People in institutions have power.
So then it's still people who have the power.
The institution is what is allowing them to enact their power.
Yeah, but who gives the institution the authority to do that?
Also, the people.
So then it's just people who have the power.
Through institutions.
Yeah, but institutions have no autonomy, no consciousness, no nothing. That would just be people or the institution, right?
So,
can you have an institution?
So you would say you have as much power as the President of the United States of America right now?
No, I would say that not even close.
His power was given to him by the institutions that make up the American government.
No, his power was given to him by the people, and
who created the institution.
That's true, but they're the ones who empower it. And the same thing with the military protecting it. The institution itself has no power absent people, is my point.
Here we have a class fallacy or composition fallacy. He keeps treating people or men as if all members of a group have the same power. He's ignoring that only a small specific group like judges, soldiers, or politicians actually exercise authority that lets him dodge the real point about how state power is structured and used.
Is it the case that men should cooperate with women? I guess if they choose to.
Well, that's what cooperation is.
I would just say if they choose to. I wouldn't say that they should. I mean, they're going to be the ones who make the rules because they have the force.
But that's not cooperation.
Well, it can be cooperation.
No, co means with.
Yeah,
so
it is with.
It's doing it together.
Are you saying that if somebody's in a position of authority, necessarily that's not a cooperation? Like, do you not cooperate with your children?
I mean, I do cooperate with my children.
Yeah, so then aren't you an authority?
That's not authority.
You're not an authority?
An authority in what sense?
You're in charge.
In charge of certain things, sure.
You're in charge of everything.
What do you mean I'm in charge of everything? I don't tell him like what.
Can little Johnny tell you he's not going to the doctor today, Mom? Can he tell you he's not?
I mean, if he's sick.
Can he tell you he's not going to school?
Again, if he's sick, that's a possibility.
Okay, but
or
you think
go to school.
You think he's lying? He's like, Mom, I'm sick. You think he's lying? Is Johnny going to school?
Most likely.
Yeah. So,
but that's not cooperative. That's me using.
He goes and gets in the car, and he's quiet. When you take him to school and you drop him off, that is cooperation.
He tries to say that parent-child power, like making a kid go to school, is the same as government power over citizens, but they're different types of authority, so it's a false comparison.
I see what you mean in that sense. Maybe there's a better word that I'm trying to think of, where it's more working together and negotiating, where there is no necessary authority, like a partnership.
Yeah, but why should men have a partnership when they have the monopoly on force?
Do you know what a monopoly is? Because if any women have real authority to use force, it's not a monopoly.
I don't see why they need to have a partnership with women.
Why would you? want to subjugate.
Later, when he's asked about cooperation and partnership, he jumps straight to, why should men have to cooperate if they have all the force? He's ignoring the difference between collective power and state class power. He's treating all men as a single block.
I would make the concession that rights are established by the government in the nation you live in, and then that the government is usually spearheaded by men. Yeah, if you don't
That's
have
not
all
what I'm
the
asking. Can you agree or do you still disagree that your rights, women's rights, fundamentally come from men? Do you agree or disagree with that? Because if you agree with that, you can concede and we can move off of this point.
When told that rights are set by the government, which happens to be led by men, Andrew demands the opponent admit that all women's rights come from men. He's confusing a few men in power with all men, missing that rights come from institutions and systems, at least the legal rights, which they seem to be discussing here, not just individual men everywhere. So over and over, he's just blurring the lines between different kinds of power. He's dodging the real distinctions opponents make. He keeps circling back to his starting claim without really proving it, just kind of repeating it in different ways. He often ignores how power actually works in society. He's replacing real explanations with overly simple or misleading ones.
There's not one time in history ever that you can point to where women have been able to collectively use force in order to dominate men. However, every point in history I can almost point to where men can and have done that, and the opposite cannot be true. Meaning that if men in even small collectives decide to take the rights away from women, there's not actually anything women can do about it. However, if women mildly and collectively, or in a small or large collective, try to take the rights away from men, there is something they can do about that.
Andrew keeps saying that women have never and could never overpower men, no matter the tools or tech. When weapons are brought up, he just changes the requirements. Well, now it's about strength, endurance, gear, etc. He's always finding a new reason why women can't win.
But I do think that would require somehow taking weaponry out of the picture. I mean, but
you don't need to take weaponry out of the picture. Weapons require strength to use. Those who are strong can use them better. Not only that, field equipment weighs a lot, right? Equipment in general weighs a lot. You also have the endurance problem, the skeletal problems. You have the heat regulation problems. The distinctions between men and women are incredible. And so when you look at a force applicator, men have a monopoly on force.
He moves the goalposts. If someone points out guns or tech, he invents a new obstacle, like carrying heavy equipment or regulating heat.
By the way, I can demonstrate this pretty easy. Western nations have become more egalitarian than they ever have been. You would agree, right?
Yeah.
But who still stays predominantly in these enforcement positions?
I mean, predominantly, yes, but
Why?
Women... Well, obviously, I totally agree with you that there is a physical difference between men and women, and they are stronger. But I do think that the gap is significantly smaller with weaponry. I don't think it's fully, brought to an equal playing field. But
in other words, if men have weapons and women have weapons, women lose.
He acts like no amount of technology, numbers, or social change could ever flip the power dynamic, which is just fatalism. He is declaring as hopeless by default. He ignores examples or hypotheticals where the outcomes could be different. He just insists that men always win, no matter what, and doesn't really provide evidence for it.
There's no system of governance in which women are not dependent on men for force. None.
You don't think that can be replaced with technology?
Nope. How? Men can destroy the technology. That's what force doctrine is.
Andrew says that men could always just physically destroy any technology one might use, totally ignoring that technology is supposed to level the playing field. He's making a special exception for his view that no matter what tech or social change happens, he just declares men would win anyway, and he doesn't really back it up.
Men maybe in groups too, but can I say that about women?
No, because you're still going to have to compete with a male group. So your only options here are either this. Like, let's even say you reduce the male population down to 5%. You're just like, yay, it's all women now, and it's 5% men or something like this. You still would have a hard time controlling them. We know this because there have been war-torn nations where like 80% of the men have died, and they're still in charge because of that monopoly on force.
He also claims that if there were way fewer men, these men would still run everything, which ignores all sorts of real-world factors, and is just repeating his original claim again as if that settles the matter.
Honestly, I don't know. I think war is more is about other things than just physical strength. It's about like weaponry. It's about how you can strategize. So I don't
Andrew,
recall.
are we assuming a world without like modern weapons and modern technology, just like kind
No,
of like
even in a world with modern weapons and modern technology.
When she says war and power are about more than just strength, like weapons, strategy, and tech, Andrew says, well, it would still be the same, offering no proof.
Even then,
80%, I would honestly, in that case, I'm being honest, I genuinely think women in that case.
why?
We're using modern technology.
Yeah. So why do you think that women who are generally speaking inept with technology, generally, we're not saying all women, but generally speaking, they're inept. We know this because of who goes into the technological and STEM fields when we have egalitarianism. Guess who it still is? It's men.
He argues that women are generally inept with technology just because fewer women are in STEM, which is a stereotype, not a real argument. He uses group averages to say no woman could ever be skilled, which is faulty logic.
They overwhelmingly are the engineers. They are overwhelmingly the people who fix everything in society. They're the ones who create and operate that very same technology. I don't think that highly specialized tech like that, even then, would be something that women could easily deploy against even 20% of men.
And I've heard arguments from, pretty sure it was him, but definitely people around him, that a lot of women don't even want to go in STEM. They're just not interested. So if they had to, I'm sure they could figure it out. Just because a gender tends to have a preference for certain things doesn't mean they can't do the other things.
You're talking about something here. If you scale it up, you start to kind of recognize how lopsided the power dynamic really is and always will be. There's not anything that can be done about it. That's what makes this a great paradox. To appeal to men for rights and at the same time say that you're equal to men is laughable.
Sure, you didn't say all of women and all of men in this instance. You said 80% women, 20% men.
Even then,
So
yeah.
even then, there could still be, even though less women go into STEM, in that 80% pool, there could be more women who are technologically inclined than
I still think they would
all of men.
lose. I still think
I
if
don't know,
you
this
if
is
you
what-
were
this
I
is
still think they would
funny.
lose. But the thing is, the point being is that even if they wouldn't, in that particular case, just that one particular case, maybe it just took 30% of men, whatever the collective was.
Okay,
The
and like I
power
said,
dynamic is
40% of men are also
ridiculously.
technologically inept. Senior citizens are also technologically inept. If you put
Mhm.
all of
Men
Generation
can take
Z
rights away from men for the 300th
like
time.
women
Yeah.
against
Even if the numbers are stacked in women's favor, he claims men would still win. When pressed, he basically says, okay, even if you're right, it doesn't matter, which is just changing the topic to avoid losing the argument.
No power.
We're in 2023 as things evolve, as psychological as tech I'm not psychological if tech as technological advances continue to come about. It's not even in war anymore. It's not a battle. It's not sheer numbers, right?
Yes, it is.
Scientific.
She points out that with technology, it's not just about numbers anymore, even in war. And he just says, well, yes, it is. No explanation given. That is just a bare assertion. He says, nope, and moves on. No evidence. That is not a real rebuttal. Overall, he just keeps shifting the conversation and inventing new hurdles, so he never has to admit women could be equal to men in power, no matter what changes.
I mean, yeah, but there are women in law enforcement.
Yes.
There are female prison wardens, COs, things like that. So
And they are, and while there are some exceptional women, I agree, who can be inside of positions like this, there are some exceptional women. Maybe one day we'll have that first female Navy SEAL. Maybe it'll happen. Okay. Wait, it hasn't happened yet, but one day there will be an exceptional Navy SEAL, badass G.I. Jane type chick who can wear the skin tight leather with the hand grenades and do the ninja kicks. But those are going to be exceptional cases.
When she points out that women really do serve as police guards or even could be Navy SEALs, he brushes these off as rare exceptions and even mocks the idea with movie cliches. That is special pleading. He discounts real-life counterexamples by calling them exceptions, so his universal claim can't be disproven.
I agree that they are exceptional cases, but you're saying, so men are the default enforcement arm of rights, of legal rights. But there are women in those positions, so I fail to see. And
because men can take them away from them collectively whenever they so choose. And they have no recourse, but men always do, which is force.
And instead of dealing with actual numbers of women using force in those jobs, he changes the subject to, well, if men teamed up, women couldn't stop them. That's a red herring, which, is changing the topic to dodge the real problem.
Collectively, sure, but I mean, there are still exceptions to that, so that there are women in those positions, and by and large, men are stronger than women, but there are weak men and there are strong women. And I feel that, the exceptions to those cases do present a problem.
But even weaker men, even much weaker men, are still usually stronger than even average women. And this is the problem with equalization.
He also strawmans that point. The argument isn't that all women are stronger than all men, but that some women do exercise legal force. He ignores this and acts like the challenge was about average strength.
I mean, I guess it would depend what the goal is. I think
to keep the prisoners who are dangerous under control.
I mean, I think women can make really great police officers because they are less likely to use excessive force. They're more likely to de-escalate, where men are more likely to escalate.
More likely to get disarmed, more likely to get beaten up, more likely to accidentally shoot a suspect. They're more likely to do all sorts of things to the contrary as well. But there's also way fewer females who are in the police force because they can't meet the minimum requirements, which are necessary to be a cop. They can't meet the necessary minimum physical requirements. Same thing in the military. They can't meet the necessary minimum physical requirements to be in the infantry. Most women can't do it.
Right.
So men have a monopoly on force, and because of force doctrine, this ends up coming down to this idea. If it is the case, you say that women can do anything that men can do. I counter this by saying they cannot. They cannot do enforcement. This is uniquely a male thing. There are some women who can be introduced who can meet these standards, but on average they can't.
When told that women can be good cops and even handle violence differently, he admits there are a few, but immediately goes back to, well, on average, women can't meet their requirements. That's moving the goalposts. When shown examples of women who do the job, he switches to talking about averages instead of exceptions, and he commits the composition fallacy that just because most women aren't in those roles, claims that all women can't do it, ignoring that having even some female officers means it isn't a male monopoly. If even one woman can and does enforce laws, it's not 100% a monopoly. Andrew Wilson claims it's just men running the show, so how does he explain women with guns, tech, or authority?